Speak tonight. You know, it's amazing how little we know about the things we celebrate. I'm not talking about the reason we're here. That is the Black experience in the revolution, in the foundation of this country. I'm talking about the Revolutionary War itself. Yes, I know everyone here knows that the colonists beat the redcoats. Hey, that was our first national Super Bowl after all. And let me do one thing before I go any further.
Looks good. Thanks, Bob.
Hmm. Most, if not everyone, online tonight has heard that the first person killed in our fight to be free was a black man, Crispus Attucks. He was the first victim to be shot down by the Redcoats in 1770 in what we now call the Boston Massacre. After that beginning, black folks seem to disappear from our history books, or at least our basic knowledge of our history. And that's why I'm here today. A moment of enlightenment, you might call it. You see, Crispus Attucks wasn't alone. By the time the colonists decided to fight to be free of the king and his decisions, there were around 500,000 black folks living in the colonies, 90% of whom were enslaved. One thing you may not know, the British soldiers were charged with murder in the killing of Attucks and four of his companions. But thanks to their lawyer, they were found innocent in a court of law. Their lawyer, by the way, was John Adams, who became our second president. The Revolutionary War wasn't the first time black folks took up arms to help the colonists in their battles. There was the Pequot War in 1636 to 1638 that saw New England colonists almost wipe out the Pequot tribe. King Philip's War in 1675-76 nearly eliminated several native tribes in New England and was a turning point in native resistance to colonial expansion. There was the Tuscarora War in 1711 in North Carolina and the Yamasee War in 1714 in South Carolina. Dummer's War was a 3-year series of battles in Maine and Nova Scotia between British settlers and the Wabanaki Confederacy. And I haven't talked about Bacon's Rebellion, Queen's Anne War, King George's War, and the French and Indian War. You know, by comparison, we're living today in peaceful times. But let's get back to 1776 and the War of Independence. You probably have seen this painting. George Washington crossing the Delaware River. You've seen it, but have you really looked at it? Did you see the black man rowing the boat? For a long time, this soldier was thought to be Prince Whipple of Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Prince Whipple's story is worth telling. According to a 19th century author, William Cooper, Whipple was the son of a prominent family in Africa. When he was 10 years old, his parents sent him and his cousin to America to learn about this new land. According to the story, the captain who carried the two boys over took them to Baltimore, where they were sold into slavery. That's where William Whipple of Portsmouth and a close friend of George Washington bought the young prince. When General Whipple went off to fight for freedom from England, he took Prince with him as his bodyguard. That was because military regulations at the time refused to allow blacks to serve in the army or the militia. But the British made a big mistake. They offered freedom to any enslaved person who would join their ranks and fight against the colonists. It was a big mistake because that action forced George Washington and the other colonist leaders to match that offer. Blacks could fight for their own freedom. And fight they did. William Whipple was promoted to brigadier general, but when he told Prince to join him, Prince said, quote, "You are going to fight for your liberty, but I have none to fight for." General Whipple offered Prince his freedom if he continued his military service. And on the day Prince Whipple got married in 1781, he was given his freedom. Today, there's a question as to whether the person in the boat is really Prince Whipple. But the painting by Emanuel Lutzer definitely proves that black folks were involved in America's fight for freedom. A close look also shows at least one woman in the boat. And like black folks, women have also been written out of our history about how this land became a nation. In another painting of George Washington, this one by Thomas Sully, the black man who is second from the right is reportedly Prince Whipple. I've enlarged it painting because he's hard to see. The first military battle between the British and the colonists is believed to be what we call the Battle of Lexington and Concord. That was fought on April 19, 1775. And as many as 40 to 50 black men, free and enslaved, are believed to have participated in the war's first day. One black was Prince Estabrook, who was wounded on Lexington Green. Then came the Battle of Bunker Hill, where a black man, Salem Poor, was credited with killing British Lieutenant Colonel James Abercrombie and several other British soldiers. Poor is there on the left in this painting, and his bravery and gallantry at the Battle of Bunker Hill prompted 14 officers, including Colonel William Prescott, to petition the General Court of Massachusetts with the following statement, quote, "The subscribers beg leave to report to your honorable house, which we do injustice to the character of so brave a man, that, under our own observation, we declare that a Negro man called Salem Poor behaved like an experienced officer and an excellent soldier. To set forth particulars of his conduct would be tedious. We would beg leave to say, in this person of this said Negro centers a brave and gallant soldier. The reward due to so great and distinguished a character we submit to the Congress." End quote. No other soldier in the War of Independence received such recognition. I know. We're here to talk about black folks from Maine who fought in the Revolutionary War. Well, Portsmouth is as close as you can get without being in our state. But we have a number of black soldiers and sailors with ties to the Pine Tree State. Plus, until 1820, we were part of Massachusetts. So let's just call Massachusetts what it was, South Maine. And while many of Maine's Black Revolutionary War veterans were born in Massachusetts, let's begin our journey in Portland. Against the Mumford Street side of the Eastern Cemetery in Portland are four headstones all in a row, one black, the others white. These are the graves of men who fought in the Revolutionary War. The black stone on the right is the original grave site of Lewis Shepard and marks where he is buried. The white stones are recent military issues and represent three other black men who fought in the Revolutionary War: James Bowes, Plato McClellan, and Cato Shattuck. While they are buried in the Eastern Cemetery, the actual location of their grave sites are not known. All four Revolutionary War veterans: Lewis Shepard, James Bowes, Plato McClellan, and Cato Shattuck spent the bitter winter of 1778 at Valley Forge, crossed the Delaware with George Washington, and fought in the Battle of Trenton, as did many other black soldiers. You know, because of the bitter conditions, many white soldiers who lived a day or two walk away from Valley Forge just left camp and went home where they could sleep in their own bed and eat a decent meal. But the black soldiers didn't have any place to go, so they stayed. I've often wondered how many of Washington's soldiers during that horrible winter at Valley Forge were black. Now, after he gained his freedom, Lewis Shepard was given a house by the Libby family of Gorham. Lewis's wife, Elizabeth, was identified as being the daughter of a Revolutionary soldier who died while serving his country. We don't know his name, but Elizabeth was born in Gray. And there were many, many others. Both Plato McClellan and Cato Shattuck enlisted in 1777. Shattuck was a fifer in the 15th Regiment of the Massachusetts Continental Line. London Addis became a hero in Machias when he helped capture the British ship Margaretta in the first naval battle of the Revolutionary War. According to one researcher, Addis served for 5 years, and with his prize money and pay, he was able to buy his freedom. He was the founder of the village of Addisville in Machias. Or was that Richard Earl, the black servant of Captain Jeremiah O'Brien of Machias? There is a question as to whether it was London Addis or Richard Earl who took part in the capture of the Margaretta. The Margaretta, by the way, was captured after the Battle of Concord and Lexington and just before the Battle of Bunker Hill. Amos Peters was another black soldier who had a community named after him. Peters was living in Plymouth, Massachusetts when he served as a soldier in the Revolutionary War. Part of his ear was shot off in battle before he moved to Maine and married a woman named Sarah. General Knox gave the newlyweds land in Warren, Maine, and it became known as Peterborough. Amos's wife, Sarah, was also a fighter. In 1783, a Massachusetts court ruled that the state's constitution that said all men were born free and equal also included black folks. Sarah, who had been captured in Africa and brought to this country, heard about Quock Walker's successful court victory and got herself a lawyer. She also was ruled to be a free person. Another resident of Peterborough to fight in the War of Independence was Paul Mink. John Freeman enlisted in Ipswich, Massachusetts in 1777. After serving in Rhode Island and Cambridge, Freeman moved to Bath, Maine. Luke Nickerson was 31 years old when he enlisted at Harpswell. He served from January 1777 to January 1780 before returning home to his wife in Harpswell. Another Brunswick man who fought in the Revolutionary War was Francis Houston, served aboard a ship. China, Maine was the home of two more warriors, Calvin Jotham and Abraham Talbot. Talbot was born in Bridgewater, Massachusetts, and died in 1850 while he was on his way to Augusta to get his Revolutionary War pension. Cuff Chambers was born in Dover, Massachusetts, but moved to Leeds, Maine after serving in the war. Two soldiers from Monmouth, Prince Bailey and Simon Parawood, are both believed to have been makers of the Quaker community. Jack Grove served as a privateer in both the Revolutionary War and the War of 1812. He is said to have been born either near Baltimore, Maryland, or in Martinique, West Indies. He died in Portland. Born in Salem, Massachusetts, Sampson Freeman served in the War of Independence for 3 years. He first moved to Peru, Maine, then to Waterville, where in 1835 he got married. Primus Stafford was on the privateer General Putnam in Penobscot Bay when Colonel Paul Revere and Commodore Dudley Saltonstall were defeated by the British in 1779. There were many others, including Prince McClellan of Gorham, Pop Russell of Weld, Scipio of Wells, Caesar of York, and London Road, Peter Smith, Flanders, and Romeo, all from Wyndham. Then there was Dinah Prince of York. Dinah received a Revolutionary War pension from the government, but the reason she did is not known. Thank you. Any questions, comments?
Thank you, Bob. This was really effective for you to list all of those names. You kept having more and more and more. If folks would like to add questions to the chat, go ahead and type those in and I can read them to Bob. I guess while we're waiting for questions to pop up, I'm curious, Bob, what about this is what do you think is the main takeaway message that you hope that we all go and, talk with our friends about over, lunch tomorrow or something?
Everyone, I've heard a lot of comment over the last 5-10 years as we're talking about Black history of Maine and Black history of this country. And my personal feeling is that I really don't want to see a course taught of it, although I do teach one. But I prefer that all of this, I prefer that our history courses include the Black history, the French American history, the Irish history, the Italian history, and the Catholic history, and all of the others. Because then you really get a true idea of our past.
Hmm.
I'm not sure that many people realize there were just this many blacks in the state of Maine at the time of the Civil War. A friend of mine, Vanna, uh, has come up and found that she's found more around 2,000 black folks in the state of Maine before 1800. Not all at one time, of course, but she's been able to identify around 2,000 blacks.
Yeah. This reminds me, I liked the way when I asked you what I should write for a description of the talk, you said if you look closely, you'll find all of us are there. And I think that's sort of what you're saying now is like
Yep,
it's everybody's history, right? Um, I do have a couple of questions if you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay, do you know or do you think that these men were freed after the Revolutionary War if they had been enslaved?
I don't know. Some I know. I happen to know Francis Houston. Um, his son married into my family, and I know that he was free. Peters, I know was free. I know that London Adis finally got his freedom, um, and there are others, but some of them I don't know and can't say. I do know that Abraham Talbot. By the way, his name got changed later, and Gerald Talbot, who a lot of people know, that's one of his ancestors. Uh, the Talbot family lived in China for a while. So that's the spelling of the last name is different, but it's the same family.
All right, thank you. Now all of a sudden we have so many questions. Let's see. Oops. Okay, Anne is wondering, do you think the soldiers may have signed up because they thought that they would earn money or land grants?
You know, uh, I don't know, and I can't really answer that question
Mhm.
because there's so many different reasons. For example, one that I did not mention here because I think I've seen his name one place. I think, but the first minister in Portland, then known as Falmouth, had had enslaved a man, a black man. The minister signed his enslaved person up for the war, but took half of his money that he got from the war. Uh, and the only reason that we know that he had this guy, besides that, was that when he died, uh, the minister wrote a note in his diary saying that his enslaved person had died. So I don't know what the reasons were. Some were fought for freedom. Some fought because they wanted to. Uh, but I don't really know the reasons, except for as you heard me say about um, Prince Whipple. He definitely went for his freedom
That's
because
it.
he told General Whipple no.
Okay, thank you for that. There's a question. I think I might have missed something, but Susan is asking about what areas were Black people in 1770, and it looks like she's got the number 5,000 if I'm reading 5 million
five
if I'm reading that
hundred
right.
thousand.
500,000. Okay, I think she had an extra zero.
Yeah, and most of those were enslaved, which means you're talking about the South.
Hmm.
Um, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut. You don't see that many in Connecticut, but later on you do. But Massachusetts had a lot. Uh, as I said, Maine had, over a period of time, had 2,000 before 1800. Um, not all at once, but there were a lot more than I think people realize. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, blacks were not. The first black person we know by name to be here in what is now Maine, his name was Matuda Costa. He was here in 1608. That's 12 years before the Pilgrims arrived.
Wow.
And Da Costa was here as an interpreter with French explorers. So there are a lot of reasons that there were black folks here. And then they came for almost well, they came here for like everybody else for jobs, job
Mhm.
opportunities.
What about this question? One person was surprised to hear about the two Quakers who fought in the Revolutionary War and wants to know, were there many Black people in the Quaker faith that you know of?
Well, remember this: the Quakers were the first group in this country to fight for abolition. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's not unusual to find blacks in the Quaker faith becoming friends.
that makes sense.
They happened to be in a town that was basically a Quaker town.
The two that you mentioned?
Excuse me?
You mean the two that you mentioned were from a Quaker town?
Right. I mean,
Oh, okay. Yep.
that town was basically uh, friends. The whole town was basically a Quaker town.
All right. Next question. What about your own relatives? We know we heard that you're a multi-generation Mainer. Do you have any relatives that fought in the Revolution?
Well, the one that's listed here that I know of would be Francis Houston. He's not really relative of mine. Our connection is that one of his sons married my great grandmother.
Okay. Well, so like a great uncle kind of person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm trying to think of others. I don't see here. I can trace my family back to, well, I can actually document my family back to 1783, which is after the Revolutionary War. And the person that I can document, his name was Boston Ruby, and he was in New Gloucester. And the only reason I can document is he got married in New Gloucester in 1783. I have that marriage record. Um, I I have seen twice in two different places a Boston Ruby being born in 1750. One was said he was born in Maine, one said he was born in Massachusetts. Of course, in 1750, they could have been the same spot. So,
Yep.
and
It's murky, right?
I don't know that that is my Boston Ruby.
Right.
so, uh, as far as the Revolutionary War with my family, I'm sure that there was some
Mhm.
because we fought in every other war since then.
All right. So for the next question, Lisa wonders, how often did the Black soldiers receive their pensions? Do you know?
That's where we find most of the information is when they get their pensions. Um, in fact, that's about the only place you can get information. It's rare. London Atis or Richard Earl, whoever was the one or both, there were newspaper articles about at the time, stories about them at the time. But in most cases, the names show up because, like Dinah Prince, although we have no clue as to where she was from or what she did to get. We don't know if she got her pension because she was a widow, because it didn't say that. All we know is that she got a pension, a Revolutionary War pension, and she was in Maine and she's black. That's
So
why she's on this list.
what kind of information do you tend to find in the pension records?
Uh, it varies. Some of it just that they're receiving it, and some they go into quite detail uh, as to where they. Some of them go into where some of the places where they actually fought. Others go into the type of injuries they got. Like I said, we that's why we know that um, Amos Peters had part of his ear shot off in the war
Okay.
because that's in his pension record. So it varies. It's not like today. It's I guess everybody that got a pension, everything is done differently. There's no form that you fill out and everybody looks like the same.
Yeah, right. Whoever is writing it down probably writes whatever they think needs to be
Yeah.
recorded. Yep. I want to quickly address, I've gotten a message from a couple people that your chat is disabled, and I've looked into the settings on this talk, and it's not, unfortunately, it's not on my end, so I don't think I can change it. It says that it might be the participant's Zoom app, so that might be something to investigate, and I'm sorry for that. But one person did message me that they thought their chat was disabled, and then they figured out how to write me. So it may be there. Okay, Lisa's telling me it is there. Maybe you got to look. Okay, next question. Do you know if any of these folks had been people who worked in the shipyards in Damariscotta or Newcastle?
No. I'm sure that, well, not sure, but I would imagine that they might be cross checked. These came up because I was looking for Revolutionary War people. I wasn't trying to, and the only reason I know some, like I said, Francis Houston, I know better than most here, um, because of I'm looking for him because he was in my family and I've done more research on him. Some of the others I have not researched at all except to find the name. For example, you see there are a number of just single names. I have no clue as to what their last name is. And in a lot of cases, like the McClellans, their last name was picked up from the family that they were enslaved by.
So is it fair to say that additional research could still be done? Someone just
Oh
asked if
yes,
census
yeah.
records might help.
I am sure that
Yep.
what kind of records?
Somebody, oh, I lost who said it, but somebody asked if there were census records that might help.
Well, the first census is 1790.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay,
yeah.
that's a good point.
Now, there might possibly be, and this is a guess, town records that go back before then that might have been saved, might be found, that might identify some. You never really know when you're getting back that far. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I have a new hot tip from someone who tells me if you are having trouble getting into the chat, you should click on the plus sign. And again, unfortunately, on my side, I can't see what you're seeing, so I don't know, but hopefully that will help. Um, okay, so let's see, Bob. There are a few more questions here. If I can just click on the right ones. Um, do, do, do. Oh, Wayne was wondering, again, if you could go back to the town that you called a heavily Quaker town. Did you remember the name of that town?
Monmouth.
Monmouth. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Renee had a question I thought was really interesting. She said that the story of, I'm not sure if I'm reading it. Right, but a story about a man who was given a house post-war, or maybe a woman who was given a house post-war because her husband was a vet. To her, that suggests that some white people saw Black people as equal to them and worthy of similar access. Is that your sense, Bob?
Yes,
Hmm.
yeah, yes. You
Okay.
know, there's so many stories, and and believe me, I know very few of them, but and they bring up so many questions. Um, Limbo is the perfect example, and that's Limbo. He was enslaved by the McClellan family of Gorham. And every winter, he would winter their cattle up in the meadows. I forget what it's called now. But Limbo and two white men who did the same thing with their cattle are the three people that are considered the founders of Fryeburg, Maine. Well, Limbo just decides he's free and he's listed as free. But then all of a sudden, he's enslaved again. And we haven't been figured out exactly how. And they list who has enslaved him. So, you know, that's just the opposite. But I'm sure that there are also in other places you will find somebody that was, well, uh, that will give land, that has land that they can give or will give, and that's, or sell, which also has happened. And that's happened more.
Okay. Another question. Someone's asked about Paul Mink, if you can tell us more about Paul Mink. And in specific, she was curious if, looks like she might be curious if he's connected to a family of German descent in the area.
I really don't know much about Paul Mink, except the Mink family and the Peters family uh, married. And so you find a lot of connections. And the Minks were in Peterborough or Warren for a long time. And Paul Mink's descendants, just like the Peters, fought in most wars that we have had since the Revolutionary War. They fought in uh, the Civil War. The Peters family and the Civil War is absolutely ridiculous almost how many Peters people from Petersboro, Maine fought in the war. They had like eight boys that all went in service.
Oh,
Some of
wow.
them didn't come back.
Wow.
And you'll find them uh, in almost every war that we have fought, including I think the last one I saw was in Korea. And since you can't find them, I mean, simply it's too soon for them to be in the records to find. But there was a Peters, a descendant of a Miss Peters that actually fought in the Korean War.
Wow. That's quite a legacy.
Yeah, yeah.
Renee asks, do you have any idea of what sort of work any of these men did? And she's curious either in the war or before or after.
Most of these were farmers or sailors. Uh, a lot of them are called day labor. You find a lot of blacks listed in the records as in the census as day laborer. And I'm not sure exactly what that means, except they got a job. Uh,
They work during the
and
day.
yeah, you'll find a lot of farm laborers. you'll find some are farmers. They own their own property and farming it. Uh, most blacks, men in Maine, especially in the 1800s, the majority of them were sailors. Not all. Uh, I've run across one who was a veterinarian. I've run across a black Maine guide, uh, although his death lists him as white on his death record, but younger in the census, he's called mulatto. So you find just about everything.
No kidding. All right, Karen mentioned a note. Did you know there's a Joseph Estabrook Elementary School in Lexington, Massachusetts, which is she recognized it as the same name as the Estabrook that you mentioned in your talk.
What about it? What was the question?
But there's an elementary school with an Estabrook name in Lexington, and I think she's wondering
That
if
I don't know, and to be honest about it, I doubt it.
mm.
But that's because I don't know.
Okay. All right, well, let's move on to the next question. Do you know if any of these blacks fighting became officers in the Revolution?
No, none
No.
of them did.
Mhm. And any other black men during the Revolution, outside of the men you talked about today?
There was one black officer in the Revolutionary War. I've read that somewhere,
Hmm.
but I don't remember who it was. He wasn't from Maine, which is probably the reason I didn't really pay that close attention.
Right. There's nothing south of Maine that we need to pay attention
Well, the
to.
South Maine is there,
South
but
Maine. All right. I think I am seeing maybe two more questions. One is Chris noticed the name Prince appears several times, and do you know anything about where the name Prince comes from?
there are a couple of others that you see here on this. I've left this list up just so that you could see them.
Yeah.
But actually, in my research, I found out Prince Whipple's name, and it has nothing to do with what we call him. But I mean, a lot of the enslaved people took the last name from their enslavers. So Prince Whipple was enslaved by General Whipple.
Hmm.
Um, the same thing with McClellan. McClellan was a big family in the Gorham area, and you find several people with several blacks with that last name. And in fact, I mentioned Vanna Carmona. She has got, and it's online, called the Prince Project. And the reason she called it that is that she is a McClellan descendant. And she was walking through the old family cemetery and ran across a stone that said Prince. And she wondered who it was, if it was a member of her family. And that was the first time she found out that her family had been enslavers. And so that started the Prince Project. But that was just a name that whites gave their enslaved people. And if you notice, they used a lot of Greek and Latin type names: Pomp, Scipio, uh, Cato, uh, Primus. That was not unusual, and you find a lot of them in that way. That was the name that they were given by their enslavers. Um, London Atis had another name, last name. It was named after his enslaver. After this happened and he got his freedom, he decided, and this is all, by the way, you can find it in literature. He wanted the last name Adis, and we think that what he wanted to do is he wanted the name that was close to Christmas addicts, and so that's what he was trying to get his last name to be.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Another question from Anne. This is sort of about a source question, but do you know anything about the Massachusetts slave census of 1754? And would that possibly be a place to find some of these listings?
I don't know anything about it.
Okay.
It might be, but I know nothing about it, so I can't
Okay.
really speak on it.
Okay. Well, Bob, I think unless anyone wants to drop one last question, I think that we are out of questions. Thank you so much. I really appreciated you coming tonight. If you have a takeaway message, I guess you've already given it to us, is that we should kind of think of the bigger picture of history rather than just kind of trying to narrow in on Black history as a separate subject. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Yes.
I see a number of people I know. I'm surprised no questions from them.
Oh, well, they might have been victims of the chat problem.
I might hear from them later too.
Um, Folks, if you have any burning questions for Bob afterwards, feel free to reach
Yeah.
out to me and I'll share those questions with him. And I have a feeling he'd accept that. And I will also send you a recording if you wanted to go back and consult the talk again, probably next week.
One last thing I'll say
Yes.
before we end. Uh, I use some terms loosely that might seem wrong, but looking at this list in the 1770s, that's a lot of black folks connected to Maine that fought in a war. Um, the word lot might be mislabeled, but I think in most people's minds, if you said how many black folks from Maine fought in the in the Revolutionary War, they might have come up. Well, maybe there were two or three, but it always surprises me how what a big portion of our history has been basically whitewashed, so to speak, in a term, or has been left out, like the woman in George Washington's boat. It's just something that we just don't talk about. So that's it. That's the end of my sermon for the night.
Thank you very much, Bob. Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.